JB, Back It Up Binge podcast. I'm talking with Hall of Famer Larry Little. Larry, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great being here.
Appreciate you joining. Honored to sit down to talk to you. Went back through your career. Let's start from the beginning. You went to Bethune-Cookman. You were a two-way starter, but you didn't get drafted. You signed a free agent with the San Diego Chargers. Can you talk a little bit about your journey from being undrafted, signing to the Chargers?
Well, in my senior year at Bethune-Cookman, I was a captain. I was an All-American nose tackle. I didn't play guard my senior year. Early in my career, from doing the days you had to go both ways, I played offense and defense my freshman, sophomore, and junior year. They changed the rules my senior year. I was strictly defense. But I had always played, I practiced at guard, but I never played at guard. And when the drafts came around, I was told by some team that I would be drafted. And with me being the captain of the football team my senior year, my room is right next door to the telephone. And the day of the draft, and during those days, they had the drafts in the 20s. So I was hoping that somewhere along the line I would be drafted.
Okay.
And on the day of the draft, I wouldn't let anybody near the telephone, because, like I said, I was the captain, I was the big cheese. And that day went by, I wasn't drafted. The next day came, I wasn't drafted. I mean, talking about Obama, I'm
Right.
thinking with a couple of teams told me that I was going to be drafted. I think the Los Angeles Rams and the Houston Oilers, or the AFL and the NFL, told me they were going to draft me.
Right.
And it was really a big disappointment. The next day, after all the drafts had gone away, had been named, I got a phone call from the Baltimore coach. And they said, Larry, we want to sign you as a free agent. And ironically, the coach of the coach that year was Don Shula.
There you go. That's right.
And but what happened, I asked him, I said, okay, what kind of bonus am I going to get? And the guys from the coach said, well, we don't give bonuses to free agents. So the next day, I received a phone call from the San Diego Chargers.
Right. Okay.
And they said, Larry, we want to sign you the free agent. So I asked them the same question. What kind of bonus are you giving? Am I getting? They said, oh, well, we'll give you $750. And I jumped to it, because I never had that much money in my life.
That's right.
The next day, I got a phone call. I'd already agreed to sign with San Diego. The next day, I got a phone call from Joe Thomas, who's the player personnel director with the Miami Dolphins. And Joe called me and said, hey, Larry, this is Joe Thomas of the Miami Dolphins. How would you like to come back home and play for the Miami Dolphins? I'm from Miami. Miami's my home. I said, well, Joe, I don't know. I didn't tell him I was going to sign with San Diego. But I said, I hadn't signed with San Diego yet, but I was playing. And I said, how much bonus are you going to give me? Oh, we're going to give you $500. I said, oh, no, I'm going to sign with San Diego. And that's how it happened. I signed with the Chargers.
It's interesting, Larry, because when I read the bio on you, it never mentioned that the Dolphins called you. That's really interesting. So I guess you were on their radar for a little bit, but you go 2 years with San Diego, then you get traded to Miami for Mac Lamb, who was a high school teammate of yours. And you went there in 1969, the year before Shula joined. So you also played for George Wilson prior to playing for Shula. Did you have any idea that trade was happening?
None whatsoever. But I tell you what, while I was with the Chargers, and I drove a Buick, and I had some work done on my Buick. Because, like I said, I came home to Miami during the off season.
Okay.
And while I was there, I took my car to the Buick dealership to get it worked on. And I ran into a guy by the name of Larry Zonka that was there.
Okay.
And I introduced myself to him. He introduced himself to me. And Zonk tells this story. And I don't know if it's true or not, but this is a story that Zonk likes to tell. He said, time he met me, he rode down to the Dolphin office and told me, Joe Thomas, and said, Joe, I just met this big guy from the San Diego Chargers. He's from Miami. His name is Larry Little. And he said, Joe Thomas told him, yeah, Larry's on our radar, that
There
they were
you
looking
go.
at me to be traded.
Wow.
And Joe said, and Zonk said, he told Joe, you better get him. Joe said, we don't know yet, Zonk. Zonk said, you see my nose? I don't want it broken anymore. So that's how the deal, supposedly how the deal happened. And
That's such
I
a
got the
great
phone
story.
call. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Mac Lamb. We had a watering hole that all the Dolphin players hung out at in Miami. And when I came home during the off season, I would hang out with the guys at the watering hole. And I gotten the word already that I was being traded to the Dolphins, but
Okay.
Mac hadn't gotten the word yet. And Mac came in the watering hole while I was in there that afternoon and said, I told him, I said, Mac, I just got traded to the Dolphins. Mac, oh man, we'll be teammates again, huh? But no, Mac, they traded me for you. You're going to San Diego, and I'm coming back to home to Miami. And Mac, they signed Mac. Oh, he went to the Chargers. He didn't make the team, but he went to play and played 2 years in Canada. But Mac and I remained good friends until the day he passed away.
Wow. So you played for George. What was the difference between Wilson and Shula? We'll talk about Shula in a second, but what was the difference between those two as coaches?
Like night and day.
Okay.
On a hot day in training camp, George would come out and see how hot it was. Oh, what the hell? No practice today. Go jump in the pool.
Wow.
Ooh, I knew you would have it that easy in San Diego. And we didn't practice hard in Miami. We practiced, but we didn't practice hard in Miami. The next year when Shula came, it was like a rude awakening.
Yeah.
I mean, this man worked us to death. Our first year, Shula's first year in Miami was the first year of the major strike with the league,
Hmm.
and we missed like over a month out of training camp. And when we did go to training camp, we went in that Sunday, and Shula started that Sunday night at a meeting. Shula was going over the practice schedule and said, "Well, we'll meet at 7 o'clock in the morning. We'll go on the practice field at 10. We'll come back in. We'll go to lunch. We'll go back on the field again. Huh? We'll go back on the field again for afternoon practice.
Right.
And that evening, we'll go back out on the field again, 4 times a day."
Wow.
I had never been through anything like that in my life. And I'm thinking we were going to have it easy because we came in that Sunday and we were going to play the Pittsburgh Steelers that Saturday in the first preseason game. And I'm thinking, well, we have a game to play. We're not going to practice that hard. And hell, I was shit. I was in for a rude awakening. So we
Wow.
practiced 4 times a day. And then for the next 3 weeks, we practiced 3 times a day. And under George Wilson, that would have never, ever happened.
Wow. Well, you came to Miami. You're on an offensive line that has another Hall of Famer in Jim Langer. You have a guy that probably should be in the Hall of Fame with
Well, I
Kuchenberg.
was here before I came. Jim came in '70 also, but I
Okay.
was here in '69. But Jim was a free agent coming in that year, but I was already on the team.
Right, but you're on a line with Kuchenberg, with Langer, eventually Newman, Norm Evans,
I
Wayne
know
Moore.
Ed Newman. Ed Newman came the next year in '73.
Right. What was it like, though, being on an offensive line with those guys? I mean, it's pure talent when you look at that in the early 70s. You guys own that trench. What was it like to look to your left and to your right and see that amount of talent next to you?
Let me tell you something. Jim Langer didn't start in 1970.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We had a center by the name of Bob, no, in 70 or 71. We had a center by the name of Bob DeMarco.
I remember that name.
Jim
Okay.
didn't start until 1972.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But
Wow.
talking about that offensive line, basically all of us were castaways.
Hmm.
Tom Evans, the right tackle that played next to me, he came in the expansion draft from the Houston Oilers.
Okay.
I came as a trade from San Diego. Jim Langer was picked up on waivers from the Cleveland Browns. Bob Kuchenberg had been cut by the Philadelphia Eagles
I
and
know
was
it. Yep.
playing for a team called the Chicago Owls or somebody.
Right.
Then we had Wayne Moore, the left tackle. He was a free agent. So all of us are basically castaways, along with Doug Cruzan, who was the number one draft pick. But Wayne beat Doug out. And there were five of us that were really castaways that a lot of people didn't have a lot of hope in being fine football players.
That is an amazing story because in 72, and I think to this day, you're still top 12 in amount of yards on the ground all time. And you're talking about teams that rushed for 14 games, 16 games, and 17 games. At one point, up to 72, you were ranked number one. And you're sitting there telling me that your line were cast-offs, and yet you had one of the best offensive lines there was in football. Wow. I did not know. I didn't realize that, to be honest with you, Larry. Wow.
We had a great offensive line coach.
That was
Monty Clark.
Yes, I see him, a big guy. Yep, Monty Clark. That's right.
And he had just retired when he came to Shula hired him to coach the offensive line.
Okay.
And Monty was a true technician. He was a player's coach. We loved playing for him. We didn't want to disappoint Monty.
Okay.
But I'll tell you a story. Our first regular season game in 1970, we played the New England Patriots. Well, the Boston Patriots at that time.
That's right.
And we gave up 7 sacks in that game.
Wow.
Monty almost had a stroke. He thought he was going to get fired. After the game, Monty was laying on the table. They were checking his blood pressure out.
Oh, my gosh.
But, when they proved to be a great hire by Shula. Shula didn't know him. He was recommended to Shula. Shula didn't really know Monty.
Wow.
He was recommended to him by Bland Collier with the Cleveland Browns. That's who Monty played with, Cleveland.
Okay.
And that's how Monty became my offensive line coach.
That's an amazing. I did not realize that, Larry. Thanks for sharing that. That is unbelievable how you guys came together with the proper coaching to be one of the greatest offensive lines.
I don't say one of.
What's that?
I don't say one of.
The greatest.
The greatest.
There you go. Okay, I stand corrected. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Let's go to Super Bowl 6, right? You play the Cowboys, Shula's second year, your third with Miami. You lose in that Super Bowl. We won't talk about that. But coming out of that game, other than the disappointment of losing, did you all as a team have an idea that we have something special here? We're going to be back.
Well, we knew we were a young football team. We had some great veterans on that team. We had Paul Warfield, who had been in the wars. We had Marv Fleming that had been through the walls of won Super Bowls with the Green Bay Packers. We knew we were a good football team. We just didn't play a good game on that particular day. And when we came back in Nation for training camp, the first thing Shula put on was that game against the Cowboys.
Really? I never heard that story.
Watch that film and say you never want to feel this way again.
Wow.
And once the season started, our goal wasn't, we didn't even think or talked about going undefeated. our goal was getting back to the Super Bowl and winning it.
Right.
And it just so happened every week we started winning and winning and winning and winning. But we knew too, once I think it really came to our attention that, hey, we won 14 straight games
Yeah.
after the regular season was over. And now, hell, we can do something that no other team had done before. So that's when we might have felt the pressure a little because we knew we had to win those next three games to go win the Super Bowl. But we still hadn't really. It was like a pitcher when in baseball, when they say he was throwing no hitter, no one liked to talk about it. That's the way we were. We didn't really talk about it. We just went out there and tried to do our job to get to our goal to winning the Super Bowl.
So one of the questions I had for you was, at any point in time during that 72 season, did you feel the pressure? But it sounds like you felt the pressure after you hit 14. Then you're like, wait a minute, let's put the icing on the cake. Now there's a little bit of pressure.
Oh yeah, it was pressure then, but we didn't talk about it.
Okay.
We just went out there and played again. Now we have to now, a lot of people say, and which is an embarrassment to me, say that we played teams that didn't have winning records. Hell, everybody started off 0-0.
Yeah.
I didn't tell this team we were going to be bad, that we were going to play were going to be bad. We didn't tell them they were going to be bad teams. They were on our schedule. Those were the teams that we had to play, and we played some close games.
Yeah, I have this. You're right. There was a game here against the Bills, 24-23.
Yeah, that's a game that could have gone any way. If instant replay was around then, the Bills might have beaten us that day.
Okay.
Mertz fumbled the ball right on near their sideline.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the ball and the official said it was out of bounds.
Okay.
And they beat us 24-23. We beat them 24-23.
Well, as far as I know on my TV, even though I didn't see it, that was definitely out of bounds.
Hey, mine too.
So let's talk about one specific play from that season, right? Super Bowl 7. You guys are up 14-0. You're about to ice the game. I looked at the film. Garo's lining up for the field goal. Gets blocked, tries to throw the pass, bobbles it. Mike Bass takes it to the house, 14-7. Where were you on that play? Were you on the field goal team? Because I couldn't see the line.
I wasn't on the field goal team. The guy that always replaced me, they want a taller guy on the field goal team. They had Bob Hines, who was a defensive lineman.
Okay.
I was on the sidelines when it happened, not believing what I was seeing.
What was it like when he got back to the sidelines? Obviously you're probably mad at him, but were you all saying, okay, no problem, we're going to close this out? Or did you feel a little bit of pressure there?
We didn't say that. If 40 eyes could kill, Garo wouldn't have made it on the plane going back to Miami. To do something like that, Garo's a good friend of mine. But if 40 eyes could kill, he wouldn't have made it back home.
Wow. Okay.
Get that close.
Yeah.
To let something like that happen.
Yeah.
So no.
So 72 again, special season. You had Greasy, Greasy, just veterans. I know Greasy called his own plays. Can you take us into the huddle? I mean, was it very businesslike in 72 in that huddle with those two guys at the quarterback? I envision that huddle being very reserved. Here's the play, very businesslike. You go get it. Is that how it was?
That's what we were. We were very businesslike. And as a matter of fact, we were called unemotional team.
Okay.
Because you didn't see guys, jumping around all the time and playing around, like that. We didn't do that. We just went out there and did our job. As a matter of fact, when we got ready to play the Redskins, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but after every game with George Allen, you would see the over the hill gang with George Allen when they won the game, jumping up and down in the locker room.
Right.
And I said this: we wouldn't let these old men kick our ass.
You were underdogs in
We
that
were
Super Bowl.
underdogs, yes.
That's amazing. How are you 16-0 and an underdog? I don't never understood that.
Well, because, like I said, because of our schedule, people didn't think we played as tough a schedule as the Redskins. That's why they picked us to lose that game.
Okay. Well, too bad for them, right? So you
True.
come back in 73. You win more convincingly in the Super Bowl that year. In your opinion, was the 73 team better than the 72 team?
I think it was.
Okay.
Uh, what in '73 we dominated,
Right.
although we lost two games. We dominated more teams in '73 than we did in '72 because we knew too every team wanted to come out to be the team to knock us off because we were so good the year before.
Right.
Now, we won the first game in '73, and then we lost to the Oakland Raiders out in Berkeley, California. And that was offense. We played a terrible game. We were terrible. The defense played a great game. They beat us 12-6 or 12-7, I believe it was score. And but after that game, we won 10 games in a row.
Right.
I mean, in a dominating fashion until we played the Baltimore Colts that year. And we had already clinched the playoffs. We get into the playoffs. We had some guys banged up. And Shula, rested some of us. Not the whole game, but a lot of that game. Plus, a lot of people don't know Howard Snellenberger was the head coach of the Colts that year. And
Okay.
Howard was our offensive coordinator with the Miami Dolphins. And the word was out that the coach was going to fire Howard that year. And Howard went on to prove that he was a great coach, not only for what he did in the pros, but what they did at the University of Miami.
Right.
But Shula didn't want to be the team to beat Howard. I'm saying this. That's the way I feel. I'm not saying that's the way he felt.
Right.
The team to beat Howard to get Howard fired from being the Baltimore Colts head football coach. And then after that, we went on to win the next few games in the playoffs. I mean, we really dominated the playoffs. We walked right through the Cincinnati Bengals. The first two times we had the ball, we played the Raiders, which that beaten us earlier that year. And I did the Joe Namath by saying that they will not beat us this time in the newspaper. I knew they wouldn't because I knew we were a better football team.
Right.
We scored the first two times we had the ball against the Raiders. And then in the Super Bowl, we scored the first three times when we beat the Minnesota Vikings and the Purple People Eater. I mean, we just dominated all three of those playoff games.
I just saw a tweet today by Paul Krause, who is on the Vikings, Hall of Fame safety.
Friend of mine, yes.
Oh, he is. Okay. And he had a picture of him trying to tackle. This was today, actually, Larry. A picture of him trying to tackle Larry Zonka. And the caption was, and I'm paraphrasing, Super Bowl, the Dolphins offense really took it to us. So you did. So we've talked a little bit about Shula a bit, but do you have a good Don? I ask anybody who ever have played for him if they have a good Shula story. You got a good Shula story? Because in my opinion, greatest coach ever.
Well, a lot of people thought Shula, and which he was, hard nosed, he was strictly business. But, he liked to joke a lot too. A lot of people didn't realize that. He wouldn't tell jokes in meetings, but in conversations with him, I was one of the captains. So I had a lot of communications with him.
Okay.
But he liked to joke a lot. Like for instance, when I faked the passing out his first year, like I passed out on the field in the heat, and they had to take me into the locker room, which I faked to get out of those 4-day practices. And to the day he passed away, he thought he got me. He said, "I got you, didn't I?" I said, "Yeah, you didn't. I got you." And he would laugh because I told him I'll fake that passing out. like I faint, heat exhaustion.
That is great. That is great. You mentioned the Vikings, Purple People Eaters. You went up against the Steel Curtain. Who was the hardest lineman and line grouping that you ever faced?
It was probably the Steelers
Okay.
with Joe and those guys. They were good. They were good. But we were better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. All right. Last question for you, Larry. This has just been absolutely fantastic. And I read a quote that really summed you up. And this was a quote by you. You said, I came in the back door as a free agent, but I want to go out the front door as a winner. And I got to tell you, class of 93, Hall of Fame, you get inducted, Shula induction. You go in with Fouts, you go in with Chuck Noll, Walter Payton, Bill Walsh. You came in as a free agent, you went out as a Hall of Famer. When you look back in your career, what do you think about?
Well, first of all, getting the opportunity to play.
Okay.
And that's coming in the back door. And going out as a winner by going into the Hall of Fame with probably the best Hall of Fame class ever. You
Okay.
can beat that class. I mean, Chuck Noll, Bill Walsh, Walter Payton, Dan Fouts, and myself, five of us. You
Yeah.
can't beat it.
I mean, look at those names.
Yeah, I know. And unfortunately, though, Dan and I are the only two still
Yeah.
surviving.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
Dan always liked to say when we get together, he'll roll up that one finger. We were number one.
I tell you, Peyton was an interesting player to watch. Fouts was just, Air Coryell. Noel was part of that whole Noel Landry Shula in the 70s. But Walter Payton was one of those guys that didn't really need an offensive line. He's one of the few guys as a running back that could he could make up for the lack of a line. That guy was just so good. Okay, I got one more question for you. I just thought of Larry. You played with two of the greatest wide receivers ever. My favorite, Paul Warfield and Lance Alworth. That is
True.
unbelievable. And people always forget. Look, I always go and you got Jerry Rice, and then for me, it's always Paul Warfield, number two all time. People forget about Alworth, though. When you look at his numbers, they are incredible. What was it like playing with those two guys?
Well, you just said something. Jerry Rice was number one. But if we threw the ball,
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. That's true.
like the 49ers threw the ball,
Yeah.
who would have said that Paul Warfield wouldn't have been number one? But when I was with the Chargers, playing with Lance, I didn't think I'd ever see another wide receiver better than Lance Alworth
Mm.
until I became a teammate with Paul Warfield. And Lance wasn't, those guys were neck and neck. Lance was a great, great wide receiver. But I was fortunate though to play with two of the best, Lance
Yeah.
Alworth and Paul Warfield.
Well, the interesting thing about Warfield is in the Hall of Fame, out of all those receivers, he leads average yards per catch at 20 and a half. 20 and a half yards per catch for his career.
True. And in the
Come
year
on.
he made the Pro Bowl, he might not have caught but 20 some passes.
That's right.
But everyone knew how great he was. But with our offense, we were run orientated offense.
Right. But what's it like to have a guy there that, okay, for some reason you get a 3rd and 8, and then you say, all right, call Warfield's number, and you're going to get either 0 or 40 yards, right? You're averaging 20 a pop. Like, yeah, let's just throw it to Warfield. We'll get double the first down.
But you know what you didn't see in Paul with a lot of people? They looked at his receiving ability, but Paul was an outstanding blocker downfield too.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. Like on the crackback block, Paul would crack back and knock a guy head off. He was tough.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Him being a running back at Ohio State with Woody Hayes.
That's right.
Paul just could do everything. Great, great, great.
That's interesting. Larry, this has been phenomenal. This has been an honor for me. I really appreciate you coming on here. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Larry.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.